And I did the interview, and at, I think it was 5 a.m, I woke up and I just started crying. And I was like, why am I crying? And then I realized it was like the biggest thing that had ever happened to me in my life. Working with Jamal was like I think I even said it in that post, like the opportunities that we were able to do. Like I don't know anyone that interviewed Mary J Blige at 24. People would rather misquote the artist and get loads of clicks than actually say what they said and not get clicks. It completely like rocked me. Like I think a lot of people, I wonder if even people watching this would be like, oh, that's what happened.
Well, let's get into it. So past, present, future, episode 41, which is crazy. So we are here with, I would say, the vastly multi-talented Lily Mercer. So music journalist, magazine editor and owner and DJ. So really a multifaceted range of talent. So incredibly excited to have you on. I obviously want to kind of navigate throughout the past, present, future journey as we normally do. But before we do so, it'd be great to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and we can go from there.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's very amazing to be on the platform. And yeah, I've done a lot in a few years, but I think it all comes under like music journalism, like you say. So I started off basically working at SBTV, doing interviews. Very quickly, to my blog became a radio show, which was quite nice. It got picked up by Rinse. So I was just blogging artists. And then within that time, I'd already planned on making my own magazine, which is Viper. And that's 9 years old next month. So it's all kind of, mostly print journalism, a bit of, video, and then the DJing kind of just came off the back of having a radio show. But I'd say that even DJing kind of comes under a music journalism energy. So yeah.
100% agree. And I want to tap into a variation of the points that you mentioned there. But later down the line, I wanted to start at the very beginning. And off the back of my research and reading the various articles on you that I have read, you were born in North London, right? Yeah. So talk to me about how it was growing up there, what sorts of adversities you faced, and I guess how it's moulded you into the person that you are today.
Well, funnily enough, we just had this conversation. I was born in North East London, which weirdly doesn't exist, but it's Hackney basically. So I was born in the E postcode, but I was raised in the N postcode, N16 and N1. But yeah, so I grew up in a place which is obviously very important for music and also like predominantly black culture as well. So at a very early age, I was lucky to kind of be in an environment where, so like UK Garage was already around, grime was coming up, and it was like at school that you would just hear those musics, like those kind of sounds there. So I think for a lot of people who maybe are from the kind of, like the culture that I'm from, it's harder to tap into, hip hop and like other elements of black culture and black music. But I was in the heart of it at a very young age. So I was lucky enough to see it all kind of firsthand. We had more fire crew come to my school to perform, which is kind of wild, like when I was like in year 8 or something. So yeah, I just was lucky enough to be in Hackney at a time when music was getting really exciting and UK music in general. And I think that foundation really made everything that I do now, lead to this point because, the people that I met and like kind of understanding that I could be a music journalist, it kind of came from the place I grew up in and the music that I was lucky enough to hear at that age.
You say about black culture specifically, and obviously it is black culture and you're white and so am I. How did it feel being the minority and being exposed to that?
Like, I don't see it as anything like, I think some people think like, we shouldn't have a place here. And I've always been, I think, quite respectful of what my place is. And I know that I'm a guest here and not in any way like an owner or, I can't be dominant in this scene. But being a spectator and being, I'd say, like a curator of it is something I think has never been challenged or never been something that people have been offended by or seen me be like a culture vulture. I've had people like slide me a DM to say that, but I've quickly realized they know nothing about my career. Otherwise, they wouldn't think that. I do believe very heavily in working with black creators. So as much as I am a white creator, I think it's like you choose to give the voice to people who have the better story than you or like that understand it better than you. And I think as long as you do that and stay respectful, there's nothing wrong with that. Like I think in the British music scene, there are a lot of people who welcome everyone into it, whether white, black, Indian, Chinese, no matter what your background is, it is welcomed in the British scene. I think America, it's a bit more complex. So we've been quite lucky, I think, in the British scene that people are quite open-minded and as long as what you're doing is good and you deserve to like be present, then people want to hear your story still. But I definitely think it's about pushing forward the voices that are more important than your own when it comes to this.
Couldn't agree more. It's an amazing answer. So thank you for going into it. I wanted to ask you a little bit about family life, and I always do because I think family life is imperative to where you are today. So who did you grow up with? How was your family life?
So I grew up with a single mum in like London, her whole family were in the north of England. So she moved to moved to London at 18, and she just raised me like single-handedly. My dad was like in New York when I was born. I was like a bit of a love child, but I've got a great relationship with my dad. But so yeah, my mum raised me by herself. I have like, I'm a riddle. I have like 7 siblings, but I'm an only child. So my mum raised me in a house by myself, but I've got like 3 half and 4 or 5, step and half. So it's very complex, but I've got a big family, but I also grew up in a very small kind of very nurturing home with my mum. My mum actually passed away 4 years ago, which was quite a big hit to just my career as well as my life, you know. But I think by having my mum had her own business, she was incredibly hardworking, entrepreneurial. My dad is too. So I kind of feel like that very much like brought me into this, you know, this career that I'm in. And she was very supportive of everything I did. Loved music too. So I really think that it makes sense that she kind of created me and that I ended up with this career of having my own business and stuff. My mum actually, she had her own archive film library as well. So I grew up watching her like kind of putting together documentaries, and like she did really interesting stuff, and I actually inherited her company. So I actually own a film library, which is weird because I don't really work in that industry, but yeah, so she was definitely in a creative world and loved history, loved culture, loved art, and you know, taught me everything she knew.
Given the fact that she was such a strong pillar in your life and the only pillar at one point, as you said, how tough was the passing 4 years ago? It
completely like rocked me. Like I think a lot of people, I wonder if even people watching this would be like, oh, that's what happened. Because I think for a lot of people, it was like, I went through transitions in my career. So it's like even kind of, so basically I turned 30 and my mum died. And if anyone's turned 30, even that is a bit of a kind of like, you know, what do I even want to do? Like you kind of have this bit of a, I don't know, it's like a kind of confronting your future, which, you know, so I had to bring the future into it. But like, yeah, you kind of start to think, because you've like, by that point you've worked so hard, but you're like, you know, where am I? Am I where I want to be? Do I want to do this for the rest of my life? And then my mum died, which is like the complete foundation I had. So it was like, yeah, it really kind of it forced me to see where I wanted to go. And like, I'm not gonna lie to you, there were a few times that Viper was very much gonna go in the bin. And I was like, just unable to mentally maintain a business, as well as like doing the work I already had. I was still on radio at the time, I was on Beats One. So yeah, I took a month off, but like, I think that month I took off, like still to this day, 4 years later, I think I've like got to catch up to the DJ again. Like, I don't think that my status in every career is as relevant as it was at the time. And it's like, if she hadn't died, I do think I would have been in maybe like a bigger position as a DJ and stuff. But obviously I wish she was still here, but I don't have any regrets on how it affected my career, because it forced me to really confront it. And like, it also like, I had a big confidence drop where I kind of started to doubt myself quite a lot. And even now, sometimes people are like, but you're Lily Mercer. And it's like, because of that experience, I kind of forgot all these things I'd done, all these accolades I'd achieved, because you've kind of like, you're looking at it from a very different perspective, because you're crushed, you know, nothing matters anymore. So it's kind of like, and I'm sure many people watching this who've lost someone, it's like, it affects you regardless of who the person is. Your friend dying can affect you like this. But for me, it was like the very foundations. It was the only person I'd ever lived in a house with. And she was, you know, just gone. So that vacuum of love was a shock. And then the career maintenance was a shock. And like, just the exhaustion of depression, you know, like even just being so tired, you didn't even want to work, but yet you had to, was like a real kind of, you know, head fuck. So am I allowed to say that? Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. You touched on depression. I think depression is different for different people, but in your world, what did that look like?
It was a weird one, because I didn't realise I was depressed before, because my mum had a 7-year illness, and I was like, basically my reaction to her dying was to work harder. So when she actually died, it was like, oh wait, what do I do now? Like, I don't even know where to go, what to do, what to touch on. And I actually, kind of just like, it kind of made me like completely go back to zero again. But the depression was something that I don't think I realized for about 2 years after. And I also didn't realize how tired you are when you're depressed. Because people talk about depression like, oh, I can't get out of bed in the day. I spend all day in bed. I can't even wash my hair. And I've never really had that, because maybe I got a sense of pride, or even I would have got fired if I didn't go to work that day. And I know, I'm not saying that the fact that I didn't made it a lesser thing, but I think because it's kind of, people say that this is what depression is. When you have a different reaction, you don't realize it's that. So it took me a long time to figure out that like all of the burnout, like feelings I'd had because of my career were actually tied into like my sadness and, you know, the fears I had about losing my mum. So yeah, there was like a whole bunch of emotions that I didn't really like isolate and figure out because I just assumed it was because I was busy and stressed.
Yeah, you say it took 2 years. What was the realization period?
Finally, like, because by the way, so my mum died 2018, COVID was 2020. So I think it was actually COVID stopping everyone else and really giving me the time to like recharge and recover from what happened to me. So I actually was lucky enough, even though I was in lockdown by myself, like I lived alone at the time, and I was like, oh wow, this is lonely. But it was like, you know, I re-tapped into a lot of my creativity, even like making a dress or like doing something, you know, that wasn't work. And yeah, I think it was like basically actually having the separation from my social life and the obligations. Finally, I could catch up and see what was really going on in my head, you know? Yeah. But we got deep so quickly. So.
No, it's good. It's really good. It's really good.
It was intense.
I wanted to ask you a little bit because you said when your mum first passed away that Viper was very much up in the air and nearly got put in the bin or however you referenced it. What stopped you?
Everyone else telling me I can't. And like people being like, this is really important for the culture. Like, as in, I mean, I think that although there are other mags that are around in a similar like lane, I think that there's something about like the core of Viper and it's got a very cult nature and it's very true to itself. And I think like there's a lot of artists that like, I didn't put them on. I hate when people are like, oh, I put them on because like it takes like 10, 15 people to really make someone blow like that. But there's a lot of people that were in my magazine that like for them it was a really early and big opportunity for them. So taking that away from artists, I think is quite a loss, you know? So if someone like wanted to be in Viper, it would have been a shame if it didn't exist anymore. Or if I say sold it to someone and they took it away from its core. But I do also feel it's like, for me personally, it's an avenue that when I'm in it, I love, you know. It's a lot of work, it's intense at every point. And like, you know, like every issue that comes out, you might cry with just the stress and the emotion. But like, actually what I do it for is much more than that. So what I actually get from it and like the pride I feel, and even just like the experience of working at that point it would have been 7 years, but working 7 years on something to kind of throw it away is a bit of a waste. Like I don't give up. So that was kind of the backbone of why I wouldn't. And even just getting, suddenly I had people interested in investing and I could see a business avenue from it where it went from kind of being, because I started Viper entirely by myself, like it wasn't like a team of us or anything, which was kind of my biggest regret with it. I would definitely have done it with more people if I did it again. But I think that because of that, it was like, oh, you're going to do this again all by yourself for multiple years. And then it was like, no, wait, we can get involved. And suddenly I could see it as like, it was feasible that I could turn it into a bigger business than just me, you know, manning it. So there were a few reasons, but yeah, I think it would have been a real shame if I had decided to quit.
100% agree on that one. I can echo that. So on the topic of Viper, I was obviously going through your social media, I was reading your articles and stuff in preparation for today, and one of the posts, which I want to get to slightly later, but was with the post with Jamal, and you mentioned SBTV earlier, and I think within the caption you say something along the lines of that Viper would not exist without your experience on SBTV. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about your experience on SBTV and I guess how integral that experience was to put you in the position that you're in today.
I think it's like, it was almost like doing a course in how to run a production company or, you know, run a magazine. Like, I mean, what we did with SBTV was a visual magazine, if you think about it. It was like short videos, like how like Live and Kicking or TV shows used to make magazine shows. That's kind of what it was. So like with working with Jamal was like I think I even said it in that post, like the opportunities that we were able to do. Like, I don't know anyone that interviewed J Blige at 24. And like, I still think like, I can't believe I did that. So he basically just like brought us through in a way that like most people at a young age wouldn't have been given that access or ability to tap into those worlds. Like being, you know, going to certain interviews with these artists that were like genuine superstars, and Jamal was like 21 and he was like the boss. So it was a very revolutionary time in music in general, but the fact that the door had opened to him, I think was like, it showed us how possible it was. Like, I wouldn't say easy because he worked very, very hard, but like when I worked for him with his own company, I realized I could start my own company if I wanted to work hard enough, you know? So it was like, one, it was a way to actually get your eyes into like a world that you didn't even know existed yet at a time when you weren't even experienced enough to be there. But it was also the fact that it was like it showed how possible everything was when it comes to, you know, any level of production, any kind of like self-funded creative industry. He showed you how it was done. And he acted like it was like nothing, even though it was like clearly, revolutionary what he was doing.
You say Mary J. Blige, I wrote down a few other names, so Nas, Kendrick Lamar, Schoolboy Q, and the list is endless, to be honest with you.
Kendrick's 4 times as well. I interviewed Kendrick Lamar 4 times. Mac Miller I interviewed 4 times, yeah. But yeah, it's mad, isn't it? Wu-Tang, like...
How daunting was it? You say you were 24 and you were interviewing Mary J. Blige. How daunting were some of those conversations?
It was incredible. Like with her, it was daunting in a way. Like she was like literally the most perfectly prim and proper like this. And I actually asked her a question which, this is probably the best question I ever asked anyone. But I said, so bear in mind she'd done a million interviews. And I was like, whose song do you cry to when you're heartbroken? Because everyone cries to yours. And she went from this to like, and she became so human. And it was like, for a second, I was like, oh my God, I like broke Mary J. Blige. But I was like, no, this is something that no one's ever asked her before. And for a journalist at that level of like interviewing an artist at that level, how do you ask something that hasn't been asked before? But that kind of made me realize that maybe I did have a bit of a skill with what I was doing. Like, I think my biggest skill is interviewing in a way. So it's like, that was something that showed me that I was doing something that other people couldn't necessarily. And I was only 24. But I'd say like not necessarily the most daunting one was Method Man, but the one that was kind of the biggest shock to the system was Nas, because me and Jamal actually flew out to LA for that. And I did the interview, and I think it was 5 a.m, I woke up and I just started crying. And I was like, why am I crying? And then I realized it was like the biggest thing that had ever happened to me in my life. And it was done. It's like, what do you do next? It was like, suddenly I had to think of what my next step was, because I'd done like the biggest career thing ever. And that was the most daunting moment I ever had working at SB, because I was like, oh my God, what do I do next? How do I top Nas? And I actually interviewed Nas again after that and did a cover story for Clash. So like it ended up not being as, it's like everything you do, it becomes normal, and then you try the next thing and that becomes normal, and you build like that. But at that time, these things were all happening within the space of like, I mean, I worked at SBTV for maybe 2.5 years, if that was it. But so much happened in that time. And then, you know, we were just like basically working in the superstar world where we could access anyone. So it felt normal to then, like we reached out to Jay-Z one day and we actually got a reply. It was like his assistant was like, I'm sorry, Mr. Carter's busy next week. Like, of course he is. But they actually replied to us. And like, once that door's open to you, I think you feel that you are able to ask again, and you've got the courage, and then you can ask more people and you can go level up. And honestly, everyone in the world is accessible if you try hard enough. So that's what I learned working with Jamal, I think.
I'm interested about the question with Mary J. Blige, and I think just from like a purely selfish perspective, being an interviewer, what's your process when you're preparing for an interview, and like, how do you try and prepare your questions in a way that they've not been asked before?
I think half of it depends on how big the interview is. So if it's a really major person, I'll spend like a day watching YouTube videos. Because I always feel, and like for any advice for anyone that wants to do interviews, I always watch the videos because you want to know how that person is. It's not just about what they're going to say back. It's like, are they rude? Are they blunt? Do they have a sense of humor? Because if they don't have a sense of humor, half your questions might have to go in the bin. Like, so I think it's mostly gauging who they are in character. And I often watch interviews like that they've done in the last year to kind of see what's relevant, and then go on their Instagram just to see what's news and what they want to promote. But most of it really is just like, as I'm learning about like this side of you, I think of something really random that I have to know about. And it's more that, like, I've got a very curious nature. So it's more that like if I was just to ask you something, you're going to say something and I'm going to go, sorry, wait, no, I need to know why that's the thing. And that's my nature. So I kind of tap into the bits that seem really unique to me. And it might be that like, that's nothing. And like, I like really random questions. Like I recently asked K-Trap what his favorite animal is. Because I was like, no, I have to know what your favorite animal is. And he hates penguins, which really upset me. But he doesn't hate, but he dislikes penguins. But that's like, now it's a memory. And I also think that's how you stand out when you're doing an interview. Because like when I finished interviewing Kendrick the second time, I think the first time was a phoner. And the second time I interviewed him at the end, he was like, what was your name? And it was like, because I'd made an impression that he was like, no, this girl's kind of, how does she know that? Like, why did she ask that? So like, he remembered me the next time I interviewed him. And like, that's, for me, as a journalist, the most important thing in the world is building trust with these artists so that the next time they sit down with you, they already know your vibe. You're not going to ask them about their relationship. They're not going to feel like paranoid that you might go in the wrong direction or misinterpret it or misquote them. So for me, it's like you have to show them from the start you're on side. And the other thing I do, when I first interviewed Raekwon, I'm a huge Wu-Tang fan. First question I asked him was the kind of question a super fan would have asked him, because it was based on the Enter the 36 Chambers album is named after a film and they'd watched it as teenagers or something. So I asked like some kind of question. He was like, all right, okay, I get what kind of, he was like, you're a real fan, okay, I got you. And he just told me stories that you couldn't believe. Like he sang Somewhere Over the Rainbow to me. Like that's on camera, like you can watch that. Like, and that was where I knew I'd built his trust from that first question. He just kind of said anything.
How unique do you think that is in terms of the bond and in terms of the trust that you're building with the artist? Because from my perspective anyway, and I sit across from people quite frequently, and I think a lot of artists, specifically perception of interviews, is really low. They don't like doing them. They think they're very samey. Oh, here we go again, another interview. So I guess there's two stances to that. There's one, it's like, I'm already starting on the back foot. Or for me, it's like there's an opportunity here to be very different and to build that relationship. So how do you view it in terms of the artist's perception on just another interview?
I think like any career, there's a lot of bad people doing something that are like becoming the most common, you know? So like I'd say that in every job, there's a small group of people that really excel and are good at what they do, you know? And I think that with interviewing, it took me a long time to realize that. But like there are a bunch of people that just, maybe they're new to it, maybe they're just winging it, but they just ask generic questions. And when you do get someone that asks or like thinks outside the box, that person becomes unique and stands out. And most artists don't meet that person until they're quite established in their career. And especially I think the worst thing about it is the whole clickbait clout culture we have is that people would rather misquote the artist and get loads of clicks than actually say what they said and not get clicks. Because unfortunately, like you don't really, unless someone's saying something really controversial, you're not really going to get a lot of attention on your interviews these days because there's so many artists using Instagram, like, you know, telling their stories directly through their channels. They don't need to do interviews. But I think that like when an artist actually does, like they know that they're in good hands, they actually really like interviews.
I agree.
Like it's an honor to, you know, have someone like really understand your music and like even... Like people, the main compliment I get, and I feel like you might get this too, when I do interviews, the main thing people say is, wow, you actually listen. And it's like, well, what are the rest of them doing? And they're like, no, they're not listening. But it's often because you're thinking of the next question or you're trying to remember like the one thing that you've got to make sure you don't not do at the end of the interview. Like, I've got to get a drop, I've got to get a picture. But like, you should still be listening to what they're saying. And some people don't know how to do the two. And then the artist feels neglected and then they close up. But I think it's like, for them, it's really rare to have someone actually care about what you do, who's in this position and who's not a fan or someone that's just in their DMs telling them how they saved their life. Interviewers have got too much ego to sometimes be a fan. And like, I think it's that ruins it for them. If more interviewers could just relax their ego and be a fan, they'd get better interviews.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is tough though, to be fair, to be a successful interviewer. And in terms of like you're saying, you need to listen, you need to prepare for the next question, you need to think about the end. There's a million thoughts going on at once, and I'm not perfect, and I'm sure you're not either. So with that in mind, what are some of the stories that you've got of interviews that haven't been perfect?
Oh my God. I mean, what's the worst one? I feel like there is like definitely some really bad ones that I've like blocked out. This is my worst one that became my best one because it's my favorite rapper ever. Can you guess which member of Wu-Tang my favorite is?
I can't.
Ghostface Killer.
Okay, it makes sense, yeah.
I've actually interviewed Raekwon more than him, but Ghostface is my favorite. But basically the first time I went to interview Ghostface, it was in Rock the Bells Festival in New York. I don't know if it still happens, but it was in the trailer backstage. And I was basically walking up to do the interview with him, and it had been planned. But I get up to do the interview and he's like, okay, Ma, you got 2 minutes. And I was like no one could do an interview in 2 minutes. So I was like, so I went to ask the question and I like fucked it up. So I started it again. I was like, and then I fucked it up again. And Ghostface was like, you nervous, Ma? And I went, no, but you just gave me 2 minutes. Like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? it was like an instant reaction. I'm never normally like rude like that. And he just like kind of smirks. And then, a lot of guys like of his kind of stature and vibe, they like when a girl is like feisty or like can talk back. You know, I wasn't being rude, but I wasn't being shy. And immediately he was like, right, you got 6 minutes. And then I actually did a full interview with him that was 6 minutes long. And then the next day my friend saw him in the airport flying out and he was like, oh, you were with that cool blonde chick. So honestly, when I die, my gravestone is going to read like that cool blonde chick, Ghostface. Like it was that kind of moment for me. And then I did interview him again 2 more times and he'd remembered me. But it was almost like a loss that turned into a win. But I'm trying to think, I definitely was going to interview some like evidence. I remember I was going to interview evidence and I like went into the Portaloo like, oh, can you just wait a minute? And they just left me and went and I like never got that interview. So there's like some really bad, you know, as in like failed interview. But the Ghostface one was a win in the end. It was just a 4-minute interview or 6 minutes one. But yeah. That's
crazy. It's an interesting story, but thank you for explaining it because for me it's humorous, but also it shows that sometimes when bad things happen, it's not actually bad. It can promote opportunity as well. So I think that's an important message to get across.
Yeah.
We touched upon SBTV earlier. We touched upon, obviously, the loss of your mother, sadly. And I did want to talk to you briefly about Jamal. So, and now I'm kind of gauging the timescale off of the back of what you said earlier. Yeah. So I think it would have been roughly 2 years each time because your mum passed away, I think you said 2018, and then there was the 2-year period where you became depressed, and then 2 years on from that is when Jamal passed away. So
also, I don't know if you were familiar with China, one of the best rappers I've ever known. She was one of my best friends, and she passed away April 8th, 2020. So, wow. And my dog died in 2019, which I know is a dog, but she was my everything. So it was pretty much a year apart. I had a lot, and then even the day China died, my best friend got diagnosed with breast cancer. I've lost, a lot of family members and even just like, a lot happened after my mum died where I lived in like a council flat. I got kicked out of that. So this is all quite personal though, but the whole magnitude of all of those roller coasters, you're right. Every time one happened, I pretty much got back and then it was like another wave comes. So but the Jamal one, it hurt differently. It's like, it's a lot of people I know when they lose a friend, it's different. And it's like a young person as well, it's a very like different kind of impact losing someone of your age range or your friend as well as, someone that I worked with. And seeing his impact on the world, like the whole of the UK just being so like, I think I saw about 700 people say that he'd made their life, he'd made their career. And I don't know anyone else that could say that they had that impact on that many people.
How much inspiration does that give you?
It gives me a lot. Like it's something, I feel lucky to be from the school of Jamal, if that makes sense. The school of Jamal Edwards, there's a whole group of people that we were influenced by him enough to do something. And like, I just can't even imagine how like the impact that he'd had. And like, as much as I don't think anyone would have wanted to lose him, for him to have had the impact he did, I think is the most beautiful thing. He was 30 and like that many people could say something, and people older than him, people younger, like, it's like, it's a testament to someone's life if they can impact that many people. So I feel lucky to have known him and everything, like my friends, like certain, business associates I met were just from working there. So it's like the foundation of everything I went on to do after. And also it's like a badge of honor to have worked for SBTV. Like people still to this day, if I say I worked there, people are like, oh my God, like, the kids in my local estate used to sing the theme tune to me as I walked through. Like, it was like such a cultural moment. And like, it's nice to know that I was like even a part of that, even if it was like just one piece of the puzzle, And like those videos that you saw on my Instagram, that's from when we did the reality show and we went out to America. And it was like, I was literally like in a penthouse with Jamal interviewing Soulja Boy. And it's like, that will never happen again. Like those crazy experiences, It
is crazy. And you touched upon earlier when you were talking about a few of the things that you learned, but I wanted to transition into the present, and to do so, I wanted to ask you what's something that you took from him that still molds you in the present moment?
That literally anything is possible. Like the whole self-belief thing was like, that was him. Like he was the one that was like, email Jay-Z's PA, like, and I just didn't think we'd get a reply, and we did. And like, I do believe now that anything that I do is possible. Like I could get to, like I've been in a room with Jimmy Iovine, so getting to Dr. Dre wouldn't be crazy. Like the level of like the network that we exist in this music industry is like, it is 7 steps to a superstar. So I mean, like, I can't even think, like, the list of names, like, that there are that, like, I don't think I could access would be maybe 3. And I can't even think who those 3 would be. Like...
You say 7 steps to a superstar. I think I understand what you mean, just from, like, a marketing perspective, 7 touch points, but for someone that potentially doesn't, what do you mean by that?
So if I wanted to get to someone like, I mean, let's say Drake, for example, I could probably get to Drake's, like, I'm not saying I couldn't get Drake's phone number immediately, but if I had a job and I was desperate to let Drake know, I'd have to contact one person in my phone book who contacts someone else, who honestly contacts someone else. I think I could get to Drake in 2 steps.
Okay.
And I think most people in London could, you know, like, you call Skepta can probably call Drake. But, like, I think that, like, for the UK scene, even someone who's maybe, like, just starting out, they could still get to Drake in 7 steps by calling, say, one person at the phone book who calls one, who calls one, who calls one. That, like, little kind of spider web of contacts, I honestly believe you can get to anyone that you want to access. So if I had an issue of Viper and I was, like, desperate to get Kendrick Lamar on the cover, the only thing is dependent of if Kendrick wants to promote something. And, like, Kendrick doesn't need to do press. So, like, that's still tricky. But the point is, I could get my request to him, and that's not an issue at all. So in some cases, I feel that it's just about you access the person and you tell them that you're there when they're ready, and then they'll get in touch. Like, I've had rappers reach out to me that I didn't even realize they knew about Viper, and people have seen one image and then they message you and they're like, oh, can I get my artist in the mag? Or that, like, the manager of someone suddenly has your contacts. Like, so it's a really very talkative world out there. Once you get into the industry and once people see what you're doing and that you're legit, some people will just reach out to you as well. But, like, I definitely find that there's not anyone that I listen to on a regular basis that I couldn't contact. Like, even like Buju Banton, I've interviewed Buju Banton and Sean Paul, like, superstars in other countries, like, let alone the American scene, which I've definitely tapped into. So I just think that, and, like, globalization has made all of this possible. So he really showed me that, like, 10 years ago, but nowadays it couldn't be more true. Yeah, and especially now I've got a few stripes, you know, I can actually be like, hey, I really want to do this, and people will reply. But I honestly think people will pay attention even if you don't have, like, your name and you're still just starting out, you know. It's just, honestly, it's about having the courage and being professional. That's the main one, yeah.
Interesting insights, so thank you. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your ambition. And from my perspective, I'm hugely ambitious and creative as well, which I think we both are. And you mentioned about the self-belief which Jamal instilled within you. And sometimes I think when you have such strong self-belief, such strong ambition, and you're creative and potentially your goals are not aligning with your actuality, it can be really tough.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit about how you navigate not being where your self-belief carries you towards.
I think it is about patience, and I always, like, it's really important to humble yourself. Like, that's where I think that sometimes when things aren't working out, I do have to remember, you know, that there are a million people in this world that would love that same opportunity. You know, it's like, it's not as simple as, like, oh, I work really hard for 3 years and I've got 100,000 followers and everyone will say yes. It's more about putting in, like, long-term work. So I've been working in this industry, so now it would be like 12 years. So I'd say that even for me right now, I'm not even close to where I want to get in terms of, like, the status and the access and, like, people really respecting what I've done. So if someone thinks that they can kind of do 5 years in the industry or even less and then doors open, it's just, like, it's not really that simple. But, like, I think it's ambition is one thing, but, like, your ambition has to match your, like, the manifestation and the actual active work. So, you know, like, we were talking about manifestation earlier, me and my friend, and it's like the whole idea is that, like, people think, like, oh, I'll just say every day, like, I'm gonna have this house and this Range Rover and blah, but it's actually, like, so much deeper. It's a lot of it is about you're so genuinely convinced it's gonna happen that it's not even a question. So it's like, when I have this, when my business turns over 3 million, like, a month, then I'm going to do this. And that's how you almost have to, like, start thinking before you even get there. So I think it's like I do have, like, the ambition of a crackhead, and I also have, like, the manifestation dreams or goals of, like, someone that's, like, very much invested in these things will happen for me. But I think, like, I've honestly worked my ass off for 12 years, and I think it's like that's the main thing, that it's, like, about genuinely, like, believing it will happen and not giving up until it does, and, like, working harder every day until it does. And I think it's harder, like, I think for some younger generations with social media, like, giving people a bit of an instant boost, they think it's so much easier than it is. But I do believe that hard work will always pay off more than a quick flash in the pan, bit of attention or promo.
Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes the people that rise the fastest fall the fastest as well, is the thing. You said there that manifestation to you is convincing yourself that something will happen. To move into the future seamlessly, what are you so convinced will happen for you in the future?
I mean, there's a few businesses that I want to have. So there's like one that I'm starting this year, and with that one, I'm like, I've already got an insane figure that is what I'd sell it for. That's the only amount I'd sell it for.
Which is?
100 million. And that's obviously is stupid money. But like, there were many, like, I mean, I could name like 5 companies that have been sold for more than that. So, and it's like basically more that I really want to do this and I want to enjoy it and I want to make sure it's successful and it will be mine until, if I get that money, that's the only thing that would make me consider separating from it. Because I want it to just be something that I create. And it's also, it's like, it's out of music. Like, I don't want to talk too much, but it's in the beauty, it's in the skincare world. So it's like, basically, it's a whole different avenue for me. I'm really excited to do it, but it's like, I'm not doing it just because I want to make 100 million. But what I'm saying is like, the only way that I'd be separated from this company is if it was to be that much that I was to be offered for it.
You say you're not doing it for that. Why are you doing it?
No, like why am I? Well, I did say this the other day. Someone asked me, and I was like, I don't know. I just basically, I make really good skincare products at home. Like my friends are obsessed with them and like only kind of use what I make. It's all natural, it's all organic, and it's just basically homemade and, you know, very holistic, but like not hippie. It's like, it smells nice. It's got like a perfume quality. It's like, it's cool. Like it's a fun, cool brand, but it is also very organic and healthy. So, and I just find that there's not really anything out there that's doing that. It's like, you either have the health food shop types or you have like these very heavily chemically scented products, which aren't really what I'm going for. So yeah, and it's also, it's like, so it's 9 years since I started Viper, and like I feel that like I love where Viper is now, and I really want to push it into a more video realm. But while I'm doing that, I've got a little hobby on the side, which basically I'm the kind of person that my hobby is also a full-fledged business. I don't really have much chill, and yeah.
How hard is it not having much chill?
It's really stressful. It's also just annoying because like I would probably be a much less, you know, stressed out person. But if I could just relax, but I just find that like, I don't know, there's so many like different avenues in our lifestyles when you live in a major city and stuff. I think maybe I just have quite intense ADHD or like something, but I just find that sitting down and doing nothing just doesn't appeal to me. And I also feel that and probably with losing friends and people that I know had really big dreams, like I do feel that every second of the time that I'm working towards my future. And I feel that there were times when for example, when my mum died and I was quite depressed, and I started to think maybe I won't have that future I thought I would, because I just don't know if I have the energy to like push that hard. So now I do have the energy. I'm like adamant that will be my life. And it's not even on a financial level, it's more of a stability level. It's like having the option to basically travel the world when I want, or like as in move to another country and come back here and just have the freedom to like kind of like take my kids with me when I have them. And like, you know, I don't want to have to be restricted in the same way that like even my mum or my grandparents would have been in that world where they just, like my mum, it took her a long time to be able to just like fly out with me. When I was like 13, my mum took me on holiday because she didn't leave the country until she was an adult, and she just wanted me to see it. And that's kind of what I want to do magnified for my kids. So yeah, I just think I have a lot of pressure on myself to be like successful in the way I view it. And that does come with money, unfortunately, today.
You say kids. Paint me the picture of a perfect personal life for Lily in the future.
So I do spend a lot of time in Jamaica, which I've been very lucky. Like this year, I spent about 2 months in Jamaica, and I'm probably going to head back in a few weeks. So, and then we have my lovely friend here from Barbados, who I'm very lucky that my family, well, my sister is in love with a Bayesian. So for Christmas last year, we were in Barbados. And so I've kind of now been lucky enough that my family life has brought me towards the Caribbean. I'd already been to Jamaica quite a lot. I love the music scene there. And I think in my dream world, I'd probably live more there, maybe half the time there and half the time here. But I do want to have like at least 2 or 3 kids. I used to say 4, but apparently that's really crazy. I'd have 4 in a dream world. But
I'm one of 4.
Yeah, 4's great. I think 4's, as an only child in a way, I was like, I want an active home. Yeah. But I find that people think that more than two can be a bit intense. So we'll see. I'm already in my 30s, so I've got to catch up first. But I would like to have somewhere between 2 and 4 kids, and like basically just like loading my family up and like moving the country, moving whenever we want. Like not for life, but as in like maybe winters in Jamaica, summers in England or something like that.
Sounds ideal.
Yeah.
Sounds very ideal. I wanted to sign off with one last question. What is one thing that populates your life at the moment that you want to be rid of in the future?
Anxiety. Is that too much to ask? Yeah, I'd say it's anxiety, and in any like random pointless stresses, because I think for a lot of people anxiety comes from a place that's not real, as in it's not like fear is what it should be, or like nervousness, but it's basically I'm not actually anxious about anything, but I just get butterflies and I get nervous. But by the way, I only get that in London. That's like very much me here. So I do find that I can already rid that from my life when I go elsewhere. But that's the one thing that I would like to, and also like I'd say illness. I think that's again a big ask. I'd like to have no one around me get cancer or dementia or any of these illnesses I've been unlucky enough to see firsthand, and their loved ones. But it's like how do we live in a world where no one gets sick? That's like probably that's going to come down to our lifestyle choices changing first. So, but yeah, those are the 2 things that kind of bug me the most, and sadness and poverty. But then you said one thing, so yeah, I told you I have no chill though.
No, it's a good answer. It's a great answer, and yeah, it feels like the perfect place to close. Honestly, I always, I guess, distribute gratitude to my guests, but I'm going to be completely honest. This is one of my favourite interviews ever.
Thank you.
Like genuinely ever. So thank you so much for coming down, for distributing your wisdom, and yeah, for being so honest and open as well.
Thank you very much. No, that is an honour. You're going to make me cry in the interview.
No, not at all.
But thank you very much for having me. Episode 41, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. Amazing.